Thank you for joining us this evening. We see we still have a few folks that are joining us as they walk in, and that's great. We're so glad for those who could join us this evening. We are going to try to start on time and be respectful of everyone's time this evening, but we do want to welcome you all to this very important meeting today that we've dubbed Partnering Together for the Safety and Well-Being of Our Young People. We feel it's a very important topic for those of you who did receive the communication that went out last week. There were three topics that we really wanted to hone in today to discuss, and we have an illustrious panel that I'm going to introduce you to here in just a little bit, and they're going to be able to share a lot of answers to probably many of the questions that you came here this evening with, and then we're going to give you guys an opportunity at the end of tonight's session to kind of group up and have some rich discussion in small groups and be able to share some of your thoughts, your ideas on things that could be that partnership, if you will, to get things going. So what I want to do first before I introduce these guys is introduce you to a couple other people, three people actually, who are part of that partnership that we're talking about, that circle of partnership. And two of them are representatives from our Board of Education, and the third is a representative from our Henry County Sheriff's Office. So if you could please help me here, welcome to the stage. We have our chair of the Henry County Board of Education, Mrs. Holly Cobb from District 3. We have our vice chair from District 5, Mrs. Annette Edwards, and we have Colonel Michael Yarbrough from the Henry County Sheriff's Office. Please help me welcome them to the stage.
Thank you, JD. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Everyone's schedule is busy, but it just means so much that you all took time out of your busy schedules to come and be here and learn with us tonight. I want to welcome you to our event tonight, our community conversation called Partnering Together for the Safety and Well-Being of Our Young People. We felt like now was a good time to really come together and reflect and discuss as we have just completed our first 9 weeks of school. And just really felt like now would be a good time to come together. We could really consider ourselves a team. The team being made up of our families, our school system, our community, and our sheriff's department. And speaking of team, can we just get a Go Braves really quick? Just had to throw that in there for all the Braves fans. But anyway, we really do consider us one big team, and we really feel that it's so important that we work together on behalf of our young people. And I hope that you see that tonight. We're truly committed to the safety and well-being of our young people, as the title of our event states. So tonight, as you see, we have a very distinguished panel that you will hear from tonight, and they will be sharing lots of things with you all that really is going to be very important information. And I hope you leave tonight with just, really a wealth of knowledge and also having an opportunity for your voices to be heard. So thank you again for being here, and I will now turn it over to Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Good evening. In Henry County Schools, one of the board's education core beliefs is that all learning environments are supportive, safe, and secure. This has been and continues to be a key value that guides our work, our investments, and our beliefs about the role of school that plays in the kids' lives and in your lives as well. You are a partner, a valuable partner. Believe me when I say that. You are a valuable partner. And our schools should be and will be places that you can count on, believe in, feel welcome, and rest assured your child's safety, their wellness, and their well-being are a vital, important part of every one of us and our 6,000 employees. So, listen up. Let's get connected tonight, and let's stay connected. In this community, this is a conversation that you would want to be a part of and to join in. So let's get together and stay connected, and let's learn together, and let's plan our next steps together.
Good evening. I'm Mike Yarbrough with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. I'm here tonight to represent our Henry County Sheriff, the 29th Sheriff of the Henry County Sheriff's Office, Reginald B. Scandrett. I'm so happy to be with you tonight because this is one of the most important missions that our county sheriffs has. It's making sure that the partnership between ourselves, our community, very importantly, our schools, and most importantly, the youth that are represented in those schools are well protected, well served, and always know that we, regardless of our differences, are working collectively together for the partnership of safety and a great scholastic outcome for your kids. I hope you see and hear some things tonight that will drives your information in a way that will bring you to action to help support the school, support your students, support your kids, and support us in law enforcement in making this the community that you know that you deserve and your kids deserve to grow up in and become those that we know they were called to be. Have a great evening.
Thank you guys so very much, and we are so fortunate to have the leadership we have here at the Board of Education as well as the Sheriff's Office, and we want to thank them for being here this evening, and they will hang around for the duration of this evening's meeting. So with that being said, you heard from 2/3 of that circle of partnership. You guys represent the other third, and we're so fortunate that you guys are here. You guys are committed to coming and helping be a part of the solution and providing rich feedback that is going to help move our school district to greater heights in a safe manner. So thank you all for being here. Now, I do want to recognize the individuals who you see sitting behind me, and I'm going to slide to the left so I don't get to blocking anybody, and I'm going to start way down on your right, my left, with the introductions. We're going to start first from the Henry County Sheriff's Office. Please help me welcome Major Catlin, who is the Assistant Commander of Field and Support Operations.
Good evening. How you doing?
We have representing our Henry County Sheriff's Office as the SRO, School Resource Officer Commander, Lieutenant Agan. Next, we have our Executive Director of School Leadership and Operations, Mr. Gabe Creary. Moving right along, we have Mr. Johnny Stafford, our Safety Supervisor. One of our principals, our elementary principals, Ms. Kristen McRae, representing Timber Ridge Elementary. Representing our secondary level, a high school principal just down the road from McDonough High School, Mr. Antonio Mattox. We also have on the stage this evening our Director of Social Work Services, Mr. Jeff Rader. And then here immediately to my left, we have Ms. Jessica Stormer, who's our Executive Director of Family and Student Services. And then last but certainly not least to my right, who will take control of this wonderful panel right here, we have our Superintendent of Schools, Mary Elizabeth Davis.
Thanks, Katie. I guess you're tossing it over to us, and let me also join in the welcome. Tonight's really about a great conversation because the world has changed a little bit. Not only in the past 18 months, but really in the past several years. And in that change, it's so exceptional that we have a community who sees our shared value in the health and well-being of our young people. And I believe today's conversation has really been built around how do we generate more conversation and actually pursue a call to action around the conditions we create for young people to thrive in this new world that has emerged. And I'm sharing the stage with incredible experts, and we're really gonna have a panel discussion. I'm hoping you find it informative, but what is more important is it should set the stage for small group discussion to follow the panel, and that small group discussion should really lead to the roadmap of what our school system should do to invest in young people, both the safety and the well-being of our youth in the months, the years to come. Now, believe it or not, it was actually just about 4 years ago in February of 2018 that we facilitated a very similar event. It was actually following the horrific events in Parkland, Florida. And believe it or not, this room was packed with 800 people. And a panel very similar to this, but very focused on campus security and school safety, facilitated a conversation with some practitioners and experts in the field, but we actually broke into these same small group discussions that I'm referring to and will do later today. And out of the 800 contributors to posters and notes that were taken, we built a very ambitious roadmap of how to invest in improving campus security and school safety. And every theme that emerged from that conversation that evening became very, very clear of the role the schools play to provide this trusted space that families can count on. Well, I think that the world has changed a little in the past 4 years, and it's time for that conversation again. So I hope you find our discussion valuable, but I want you to know we will find our small group conversations incredibly valuable, and it will be used to design the roadmap of how we invest next. So let's get started. Now, we have 3 categories that we thought we could talk about the safety and well-being of young people, and we're going to start with the reality of COVID-19. That'll be our first topic. We will move then into digital and social media safety, and then we will conclude with campus security and personal student well-being. And if I start with that COVID-19, it's certainly a season that none of us would have preferred to pick traversing. And I'd love to just kick off our conversation today, and I'm going to ask you, Ms. Stormer, if you would, I want you to just talk a little bit about the evolving conditions of COVID in our community and really how that's impacting the health of young people, and sort of what do you see that's next?
Absolutely. Well, it really is a pleasure to be here with everybody today. And I just mentioned backstage, you know, if you had asked me 5 years ago, would I be sitting here talking about the effects of a worldwide pandemic, I would say absolutely not. But what I will tell you is we've learned a tremendous amount. As a community, as a county community, and as a society, and now as a school system, we have been through so many ups and downs. We have all experienced great losses in our daily lives and loss of loved ones. We have been forced to adapt and evolve so that we can meet the needs of this pandemic and try to move gracefully as possible through crisis and recovery and iterations of each one as we move along the way. And what I will say is that I am super proud to work for a district who quickly organized and synchronized many systems and operations. Many people don't even realize, and we hope that you don't, realize how many systems and operations take place every day so that students can learn in each individual classroom. And so we were able to quickly organize and get the right people together and form coordinated efforts and responses so that not only could we respond to the immediate need, but we could learn along the way and then apply those strategies later on. And that really worked out for us. Because what we've seen as we've been monitoring the conditions, and one of the most effective strategies we had was daily monitoring of COVID-19 conditions in our county. So we monitor the state conditions, we monitor our county conditions, and that led us to really key in on the conditions that affected our schools, our school campuses, and each individual classroom. And so being able to pull on that knowledge allowed us to put in place some really powerful protocols and create a layered mitigation efforts that include each system that I'm referencing. That includes technology, instruction, spacing, nutrition, technology, transportation, and all of the above. So we all work together to design these mitigation strategies. And what we've been able to see through daily monitoring is that schools have been one of the safest places for our students to be. And so when we're monitoring transmission rates and we see transmission happening, we document every single case. And the most likely place for a student to contract COVID-19 is outside of the school setting. Because in the community and neighborhood settings and informal settings, they're not practicing these very structured mitigation practices that we have become experts in. And so that makes a lot of sense. So we learned that students really need to be in school. And moreover, we learned the true and deep value that we all knew in our hearts and minds of students feeling truly connected to people and to very meaningful activities that help them learn and grow. So we know that students need to be in school. They need to be with their peers. They need to feel connected to their talents, their abilities, and then to their futures. And so that really drove us to make certain that we were doing everything in our power to make sure we could keep schools open, keep children in school, and make sure that they could pursue the future of their dreams, even in the midst of these crises and COVID-19 pandemic. And so as we're monitoring these daily conditions, and now that we've been doing this for the past 18, almost 19 months, what we have seen is that there have been 3 clear waves of COVID-19 spikes and transmission. And so we monitor daily COVID rates, and one of the many data points that we monitor on a daily basis is our 14-day transmission rate. And the 14-day new case rate is the number of new cases per 100,000 residents within a community that have occurred over the past 14 days. And using that new case rate, and you can go to the DPH website. They have a great website where they track this, and then we have our own monitoring system where you can see that we have been doing this on a daily basis since the start. So you can correlate this data yourself, too, if you're interested after you leave here. But there have been 3 clear waves. And because we've been doing this for so long, now we're monitoring, and now we can kind of see, okay, this is what we need to do here, and this is what we need to do here. And what I'm pleased to say is that we are on the backside of this 3rd wave. This 3rd wave has been the most aggressive, it has been the most intrusive, and it rose at a level that was quicker and faster than either of the previous 2 waves. Another interesting data point is that the most notable change in infection rates during this past wave was between the ages of 0 and 17. So our students, ages 0 and 17, we saw a spike in this age group that we did not see in the previous 2 waves. So we found that very interesting, and that was an important data point for us as we are rolling out and responding with our layered mitigation action. And so when we talk about that, and we're good at monitoring conditions now, we've got really great protocols in place, but we know the most effective mitigation strategy is considering the use of vaccine. And as the medical community has made available effective vaccines that have been tried and true and have proven to be effective and safe, we are excited that vaccines are available now and have been approved for students as young as 5 years old just very recently, and are currently available, certainly for students that are 12 and older, and for all adults. Our school system was able to make available a closed pod vaccine event. We are probably if not the only school system.
I think so.
Probably the only school system, I don't want to brag, but we're the only school system that made available a closed pod vaccine opportunity for all of our employees. It was very successful because we know that students learn when our staff is healthy and able to provide instruction and safe learning environments. So we do encourage everybody to talk to their medical professionals. Of course, this is a personal decision and a medical decision that you should make with your healthcare provider. But with the use of that vaccine, that's what we know will help keep as many people safe as possible. And of course, as the medical community makes other treatments available, we are following the new report that there could be a treatment on the horizon, and so we'll be following that report. But as our medical community makes advances, we will continue to monitor our protocols and respond in concert with our medical community to make sure we're doing the absolute best we can to keep children in school safe where they belong in a space that they belong.
Well, Jessica, we're thrilled that you could, first of all, be a key leader in our pandemic response and management. But it sets the stage for why now talking about digital and social media health and safety practices becomes so vital. We have seen now 3 years of some level of disruption, and honestly, it's resulted in some level of isolation that young people had not previously navigated, and really families had not previously navigated. So we are seeing in our field, our profession of education, increasing concerns related to the behaviors that occur online. So I'd love to start just, Mr. Rader, if you could kick us off. Let's just talk about really what you're seeing with this disrupted learning experience, and really how is it beginning to affect the health and well-being of young people. And just talk a little bit about the national picture and how, as leading our social work team, you are really seeing that show up locally.
Yeah, it's very much an honor to be here. There are some statistics that were very disturbing to me in my 25 years of doing social work, very alarming. A couple are that half of the adults with children in our country have expressed concern about their child's personal health, including mental stability. There was a 22% increase of kids who were transported by ambulance due to threats of self-harm. Suicide is the second cause of death for individuals 10 through 34. And 140,000 kids in our country have lost a significant adult during the pandemic, or actually just this past year. And when we look at our students, so we look at Henry County kids, we look at our student health survey, and when you look at the survey that was completed last year, our kids are reporting more thoughts of self-harm, more thoughts of suicide, more actions of suicide. And so these are the alarming things that we see, and as a social work team, we're seeing more behaviors, more emotionality, so we're seeing all kinds of issues with our kids. And I'm very proud to be a part of our district that is doing things in our school to combat this. So I know I was going to talk to our principals, our care teams, identifying trusted adults, connectivity in our schools, but wanted to maybe ask you guys a little more about, or talk to you guys more about what you guys are seeing in your schools or what you were doing to combat these issues.
Yeah, so I'll start from the elementary perspective. And, you know, kids walk into the elementary school as early as kindergarten with a cell phone. Usually our 4th and 5th graders, when we're collecting during the time of milestones, you know, we get buckets of cell phones, you know, collected. And I'm just amazed at how many kids own a cell phone. And with a cell phone, when you own a cell phone, there's a level of maturity and responsibility attached to cell phone usage. And so, you know, as a parent, I'm a parent of 2 elementary students and young girls, and we're constantly having those communications in our household about being responsible. Yes, you can, you know, play certain educational games on your cell phone, but I also want you to know that there's a lot of toxic and misinformation out there. And so, you know, even with discipline, when we look at discipline, and we talk to our kids about, you know, well, where did you learn that? Oh, well, you know, Roblox taught me that, or I saw it on, and this, I'm not just talking about cell phone usage, but just TV and just other avenues of media in general. You know, they're like sponges. They, you know, they emulate any behaviors that they see. And so at the elementary level, I just want to say it starts very early, parents. TikTok and Snapchat are not their friends. They may think they are, but there's a lot of issues that we have to unpack surrounded by that. And you talked about suicide and how suicide rate is up, and you know, the whole social emotional aspect where kids, that's where cyberbullying starts. And so we may not know really what is going on with the child until we bring that child in, connect that child with our counseling department, our mental health and wellness, which has been a wonderful asset this school year. I don't know, I can't remember life without my mental health and wellness person, but it's just when you start unpacking what's truly wrong, it typically goes back to some issue that occurred through social media that maybe parents weren't even aware of. And so that's what I see as early as elementary. I can only imagine what this gentleman sees at the high school level, but I'll give you an opportunity to speak about you know, the high school world.
Good evening. Much of the same behavior, and I would just advise parents to continue to monitor your students' technology, that being their cell phones. And I'm a parent. I have one freshman in college, and I have a junior. So I'm living this life right now, and you know, you have to monitor their technology, knowing the students' passwords to their technology. Swipe through their phones, and what I did as a parent, you know, I would advise that my children had to check their cell phones in. So every evening when it was time for them to turn down, because the use of technology, they're using technology, especially during the pandemic. They're using it utilizing it during school. Then on top of that, they're utilizing their cell phones. And then just imagine, and I've experienced this as a parent, my children with their Chromebook, they're products of Henry County, but they have their Chromebook and they have their cell phone, and using both at the same time. It's not good. So we advise, and we just had them check those cell phones in, and just making sure that they're, when I mean monitor their technology, make sure they're utilizing their technology appropriately. So what do I mean by appropriately? Meaning that you seeing the interactions between your student and their peers and adults, making sure that they're using that technology appropriately, monitoring their language and how they're using their language. Contrary to popular belief, some kids use profanity. So they should not be using this profanity with communicating with their peers. And so having conversations with your students about the appropriateness of technology and making sure that we're teaching our children about using appropriate language, even when you're texting, even when you're communicating TikTok or Instagram, various things. But in order to monitor that, you must know your children's their passwords to get in there. And those, if you're not monitoring that daily, some of those messages are deleted within 24 hours. So I would just advise you to monitor that technology, knowing how they are using it appropriately. Also, sexual videos, making sure that they are not forwarding, keeping, and just passing along those explicit videos, fights. They love videotaping fights, middle school, high school, and I'm sure on the elementary school level. Just ensuring that you know what's going on with your child and how they're utilizing this technology. It will curtail a lot of problems as it relates to this technology and the Chromebook as well. So having ongoing conversations with your children based on technology, and when you see that they're not utilizing this technology appropriately, make sure you're having these conversations and making sure they know the things to do and how to utilize the technology.
Yeah,
So
and I'm so
I was just
sorry.
saying, Ms. McCrae as an elementary principal, then Mr. Matzax as a high school principal, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm almost feeling like that's probably someone else's child that you're referring to. So I would love, actually, if Jeff, give us some of those statistics that you've drawn out, and then I'd love to go back to you, Ms. McCrae, before we actually bring in Major Catlin to talk about how quickly this turns into law enforcement hands.
Yeah, it's very interesting that recently I just found out, looking at this, 10% of Americans have a social media addiction. And it said that 40% of young adults have insufficient sleep because they're on social media.
So I'm sorry, you're saying nearly 1 in 2 children come to school having not slept because of their involvement with social media. So when I'm in car rider line, I should be thinking, wow, 1 in 2, am I the car or is it the car in front of me? And how am I talking to my child? Okay, so I mean, these are startling to me because I think it's easy to imagine this is happening in another household.
Yeah, and so teens who spend more than 5 hours on social media are twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression. So again, these statistics are very alarming. I know with the suggestions they were saying, sometimes also we talk as social workers to families, is it set up a time to turn everything off, put all your social, it's hard for us, right? You know, it's hard for us to get off of our phones, but having everybody as a family, you're gonna put this up, we're all gonna take part of this, because it's just as hard for us, but again, they're more impulsive, right? Their brains are still growing. So making sure that you set that up, and also establishing that I can go through your phone at any time. So at any time I can go through your phone, I can get it up, I can go through your social media, I can go through your text. It's going to be difficult at first, but in the long run it'll pay off.
And I was just going to speak from the elementary perspective. The lack of sleep is huge. I mean, when we start talking to kids and, you know, they are dealing with a conflict at school and we unpack that, you know, what happened, we come to find out, well, the phone's been in my room, the TV was on, I couldn't go to sleep, or maybe they sleep with an older sibling, or, you know, share a bedroom. And so that's huge, because then if they don't get adequate amount of sleep, then they wake up in the morning probably late, they're probably not beginning their day with healthy eating habits, and then the rest of their day is just not necessarily doomed, but we know that we're not setting them up for success in that manner. So I love how you said, you know, keep the cell phones out on the counter, go through them, and you shared a statistic, 40% or nearly half. We have students at the elementary level who don't own a cell phone, but who share with another student. So a student will say, hey, can I borrow your cell phone? And so they'll go and do the misbehavior, you know, and then give it back. And then, you know, so both are responsible at that point, because both were in the know. You shared your password, you shared your device. And so it just, you know, it just exacerbates. So, but I would like to give a shout out to the work that our Board of Education is doing around digital literacy. because I think it's going to be huge. I'm very excited about that work because it affords us the opportunity to have just screen time balance, healthy screen time balance, and, I like that we're starting the conversation here about social media awareness because, it starts early, and I think a lot of people don't realize how early it starts. So super excited about, just the conversations that I'm having with teachers about, hey, I know during COVID, we needed the iPad always on and the Chromebook always in our face, and you needed to access Google Classroom, and you needed to do this, and everything was digital and everything was electronic. And I'm happy to see that while COVID has not gone away, that we are beginning to get back to some type of new normalcy. And I'm happy to bring back, the anchor charts and the manipulatives and the creative arts and the STEM activities, because that's really what kids need to be doing. We talk a lot about brain development at the elementary level. Children are learning, and they have, dopamine firing, and they need to be reading and getting outside and working through that energy instead of engaging in those sedentary behaviors. So those are our little ones that come to us, and they've got a ball of energy, and we need to help them, use that energy up. But so we're just trying to do our part at the elementary level, taking away that phone, taking away that device, and just adding more hands-on resources instead of always going to the technology.
And I don't think we'd be having this conversation if we weren't really growing very unsettled about the relationship children are creating through social mediums. And that we've even seen that actually once when I was a kid, you really did want to please your parents and your teachers, but now you are really pleasing peers through social environments, and how that has shifted the balance of decision making and the distinction between right and wrong. And so, Mr. Mattox, you were about to add to that, but I think this is really growing and unsettled for us.
Yeah, and I would simply add, you asked the question about not my child. I would just have, we have to do one thing. You have to verify. So trust your children, but verify. So always trust them, but verify.
I see some parents like nudging, so I'm not sure if they want you to say that one more time.
Trust them, but verify. So I trust mine, but I cannot put past what they might do or what they may be encouraged to do. And so what I have to do is verify that the way that I've instilled values in them, that they are implementing those values even with their peers. So I would just advise all parents, trust them, but verify everything.
All right, so Major Catlin, let's bring you into this conversation because this can go poorly, quickly, and you have a lens on our young people and their involvement in devices and social media. Talk a little bit about what you see and how an educator's lens becomes your lens quickly.
Absolutely, and thank you all for being here. I hope you all can get something out of this conversation. I think it's great. Social media is a very nice platform. It gives our teens an opportunity to be able to express themselves and network with other people. However, what we've been seeing with social media, especially in the schools, are our teens using social media to put on fights, to be in private chat rooms, where we're seeing a lot of sexual videos, things of that nature. A lot of profanity-laced cartoon caricatures that are being shared back and forth through social media. And a lot of our concerns are sex trafficking, things like that, bullying, that our kids are being engaged in because they're getting engaged in these conversations with individuals on these chat lines where they think they're teenagers that are their age, 15, 16 years of age or younger. But in a lot of cases, they're actually talking to someone that may be 50, 45, 35, you just don't know. So I want to just make sure that parents understand that for law enforcement, once we get involved in these kind of cases, it makes it really difficult for us to kind of investigate them when these kids are sharing these different platforms and photos back and forth constantly throughout the day in schools. We're seeing that a lot. But what I want to encourage the parents to do is to keep an open dialogue. I think we mentioned that a few times here. But also educate your kids on social media, but also educate yourself. A lot of these platforms, as a parent, I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and they're all on social media. And I had to learn a lot of these social media sites myself. In particular, she mentioned TikTok, Snapchat, and like Instagram. Those are some of the most popular sites that these kids are getting on. I think Facebook, they don't really use that anymore. I think that's for the older people like us. But also set some ground rules. Make sure your kids understand the ground rules on what they can and cannot do on the social media, what sites they can go to, what sites they cannot go to. One thing that I did with my grandkids is that we were able to set time limits on the devices that they use that would shut off at a certain time, so it kept them from being on those sites, so that we can kind of keep them safe. But also, I want to encourage you to keep the kids from posting photos of themselves, photos, dates of birth, when they're going to be out of town or they're going to be like at, I think a lot of people do, a lot of grown-ups do it. You'll be at a movie theater and you put yourself out on social media that you're at the movie theater. Well, that's not good for our teens to do stuff like that. But also consider products that allow you to monitor your child's social media. There's also apps that you can get like Life 360 that will monitor where your child is. So you have the app on your phone, they'll have the app, and you can tell where that child is at all times. One of the biggest aspects I want you guys to take away from this is when I talked about the violent fights, so we've had one most recent fight that we're investigating where we had kids inside of a school beating another student, and where other kids standing around and photographing that student being beat, which is atrocious. You know, my heart dropped when I saw this video. No one came to that child's aid at all. Things like that, and those things are being shared on social media for everyone to see. So we get involved in it, and of course we start an investigation on it. And again, I just want to touch on the sexual explicit things. Just make sure your child is not posting sexual explicit material, that you're examining their phones. I look at my kid's phone as my phone. If I bought it, it's mine. You're just borrowing it. So let's make sure that we just kind of monitor those things.
Well, thank you, Major Catlin, and thank you for making us all a little nervous. And but the reality of how quickly this can be in your hands for an investigation is pretty vital. You know, Jeff, I'd love to come back to you one more time and just talk a little bit about some of those tips for families. We've heard quite a few along the way, but this is easier said than done sometimes. So give us some language, give us some skills, give us some routines to include in our day.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to that, which we've found fascinating as social workers, is they're thinking it's attributed, eating disorders are huge and on the rise, and they're thinking it could be attributed also to social media in terms of those unhealthy expectations of what they see online and what they're looking at. But like I said before, I think if you can set that precedent that I can go through your phone, just as you said, I can always go through your phone. It's really hard, right, to tell a teenager that. What would we do right now if someone said, I can go through your phone? We would get upset. But setting that precedent that you can go through their phone, having times that you can always turn the phone off. You know, the people talk about turning your phone off at dinner, turning your phone off at certain times on the weekend, but having set times where you can turn it off. Again, you can check their social media at any time, and that just because you're following your child on social media, they're way smarter than that. So you think, oh, I'm good, I'm following them. No, you're not following them on social media. You think you are, but you're not really following them. And then stressing that privacy settings does not mean safe. So, you know, a lot of, oh, I'm doing this in a privacy setting, that does not keep you safe. But again, I think the biggest thing is if, as a family, everybody turns that phone off. So then it's not just you telling them, but as a family, hey, we're all going to shut this off together. And it's hard, right? It is really hard, but if we do it with our kids, it'll make a huge difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Now, we could probably have a whole session because we're becoming very passionate about our generation of parents really needing to come together for our next generation and when it comes to social media and digital use. But we do want to use our time to also shift into campus security and student well-being. All of this gets connected. We have a worldwide pandemic. We get isolated. We rely heavily on devices and technology. We need to swing the pendulum back. We are now back in school, really with 98% of students back on campus. And as a result, it's now time to talk about, okay, school safety, campus security, and students having a sense of well-being while at school. So, Mr. Stafford, I'd love to just start with you. We already acknowledged that your role as our safety supervisor really emerged out of a conversation that happened in this very facility 4 years ago. And we've really had a roadmap of strong investments. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about those investments, how they show up in our schools, and really elaborate on the safety practices and routines that are consistent throughout our district.
Sure thing, Dr. Davis. First thing I'd like to applaud the partnership and the collaboration that goes on daily in our district. That's have to point that out. That's awesome. When we talk about safety, no one really thinks about safety until you feel unsafe. It's kind of equivalent to when you think about air. No one thinks about air until you're asthmatic or you can't breathe. And the reason I say that is because Henry County Schools definitely looks at it with a different lens. And they think about safety and put it on the forefront of things constantly. Even in the midst of facing a pandemic, we met and talked about safety, you know. So that is awesome. Some of those investments that I'm going to speak on actually took place some years ago in this type of environment, this type of stage. So, and those things are here now and they're present, and we're benefiting, our kids are benefiting from that conversation that we have in these type of events. One of those low cost, well, actually one of those zero cost investments were to make sure that we're simple things, locking our doors. You know, make sure that there's protocol that doors are closed and locked and secure at all our buildings, schools and district buildings. IDs for teachers across our districts, IDs to know who's in your building. If they don't have ID, who are you? You need to go to the front office, you know? So to have those small things, safety drills that we have monthly, you know, evacuation drills, fire drills, shelter-in-place drills, all these things are zero-cost investments that we talked about on this type of event and said, okay, we have to make sure that these are mandatory and these are our monthly and yearly regiments and standard operational procedures. But then we have some low-cost things safety investments that we, as a district, we put in place. Some of those things are like our front security doors that we had put in all our school buildings to make sure that no one is entering through our front lobby, Dr. Davis, without, you know, being directed into our front office. You know, that was a small cost, but that's major. You know, that thanks for Mr. Josh Malcolm for leading that for us. That was awesome. We also have other small, low-cost investments of safety that we put in place. And we have Angel Track technology that we put in all 300 plus of our buses in our district. And that's cameras. We have new cameras in our bus, our fleet of buses. I'm saying 5 to 6 new cameras depending on the size of your bus. You know, that's a driver's view, that's a windshield view, that's several student view cameras in a bus. This is awesome. This is what we need. That hinders some of that behavior, which in returns makes our school buses more safe. So that's awesome. We have other long-term safety investments that's taking place in our district as well. And we have a crisis alert system that definitely empowers our teachers and our administrators, and it gives them the capability to have, you know, immediate access to assistance in whichever manner that they need it. If we have, like Captain talked about, we have student altercations sometimes. We have medical situations that need to be addressed. Sometimes we have people just fall down. So this allows the administrators and the teachers to have that instant, you know, instant and immediate assistance when needed. But I can't leave out the fact that to myself, the biggest investment that's amazing to me is, and it's led from the Family and Student and Supports Division underneath the lead of Dr. April Madden. And that is our mental health and wellness facilitators. Oh my God, that's safety, proactive measures of safety that you can't even speak of, because you are giving kids and teachers the opportunity to express themselves and say, hey, I need some help. You're addressing the problem before it becomes a problem. So if that's not safety, I don't know what safety is, you know. So I can't wait to the conversations that's gonna, you know, cook up in this setting. I'm glad to see 52, I did count, I'm sorry. and we have some outside. I'm glad to see these individuals here because this is going to allow us the opportunity to really, cook up ideas and make our county even safer than what it is. And I'm sorry, I can't leave out. I'm sorry, I can't leave this out. We also have coming is the access control project. It will start in January and it should finish up in 2022, 2023. So when the next school year starts, we'll have control. We'll have it's a buzzer system. It's a single entry buzzer system. Excuse me. It's being piloted right now at Mr. Mattox High School and the middle school and at the county office. And this is awesome. This secures all our doors at all our schools. That's elementary, that's middle school, and that's high school. That's awesome, technology that's really going to lead the way for safety. I'm excited about it's coming because I myself have 3 daughters that's in school in Henry County. So yes.
That's right. I want to underscore something you said in your opening remarks is that you don't really think about safety until you feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. And we really have a conviction that every child feel like they belong, feel like they are connected to a caring adult, and that they feel safe in their learning environment. And of course, that matters, and we're going to talk about why that matters, so that you can learn at high levels. But I just can't imagine another school community who can talk about the role and voice of community members in forming those investments that you just laid out. And I think that's really powerful, and it's what our discussion at the conclusion of our panel will lead to our next series of how we invest. Sometimes no-cost investments at all, just observations families and students make about how we could just do better and continue to grow in our practices. You really walk through so many of those no-cost, low-cost, and long-term investments. But also emerging from that conversation 4 years ago was how to grow our partnership with our sheriff's office so that our young people have positive relationships built with our members of the law enforcement community. And it was at that time we actually moved to a ratio of 1 to 1, one SRO per every middle school and high school, and has really built a very strong relationship in that school setting. It was actually one of the biggest discouragements of last year was that opportunity to grow those relationships. Well, Lieutenant Egan, you are our SRO commander and you lead our team of SROs, and we're very thankful for you. We would love for you to talk a little bit about the role of SROs. These physical investments are significant, but the human investment and the relationships and the role SROs play is equally as significant. Can I turn it over to you and ask you to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am. Just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I'm glad I could be a part of this. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for putting this together. Our approach to the SRO unit is three-pronged. The first priority and the main priority of the SRO unit and the SRO is safety and security. We want to provide a safe learning environment for our students. We want to provide a safe working environment for our administrators and educators so that they can focus on education. And yes, safety and security is the principal's responsibility ultimately, but they have us there to focus on that. So there are several ways that we provide safety and security inside the building. The SRO is immediately available to respond to a potential threat inside the school or from outside the school or just outside in the community. So the SRO is available to respond to that and hopefully take care of that as quickly as possible. We also monitor, going back to social media, we monitor social media. We are available if a parent sees something concerning on social media, on their student's social media or on their social media. The parents should know that they can contact the SRO at that school or me or Major Catalan to let us know that so we can check into that and investigate that and make sure that that's not, hopefully it's just a rumor and we can determine that quickly so we can keep our students safe. We consult with individual school administrators in regard to any safety or security concerns in the building. It may not be something that we need to investigate or check into, but if we can see an unsafe situation that needs to be corrected, the SRO can go to that administrator and say, hey, you know, this seems to be an issue. This door keeps, you know, seems to keep left open. How can we correct it? Also, you know, if an administrator or SRO has a concern that they need to bring to me, then I can go to Mr. Stafford or Mr. Creary, and if it's something that's a district-wide concern, then we can work together to correct that. We provide security and safety at extracurricular events, sort of football games, basketball games, other events, dances, homecomings, proms. We're available to the administrators, to the school, to the students, parents, to work those and keep those safe. The second of our three-pronged approach in the SRO unit is education. So the SRO is available to go into classrooms and instruct students and teach them about safety issues, whether it's internet safety or social media safety, stranger danger, that type of thing. Something as simple as seatbelt safety. You know, why it's important to put your seatbelt on when you get in the car. We can do that in a classroom. We can do it in an assembly setting, you know, with a grade level. Of course, that's age appropriate. Same thing with, we can go into teaching them law enforcement topics. High schools have a criminal justice program that SROs are heavily involved in. They go in these classes and they'll instruct on law enforcement topics, especially with our high school age kids. You know, how do you, when you get pulled over, what's the proper way to act to make yourself safe and make the officer feel safe? So we can do that, and we do that. The third prong of the SRO unit, or the approach to the SRO unit, is counseling and mentoring. So the SROs are available for students to come to if they see an unsafe situation, or they're having trouble, or they're suffering some type of trauma. And so to do that, we have to build that positive relationship for them to feel comfortable coming to us to address that and to help them. And two, we also have to build a relationship with not only the school administrators, the principals and assistant principals, but also our counselors, our social workers, our mental health facilitators. You know, because if we see a kid or student that seems to be having an issue that day, it may not be something for us to address, but we want to get it before it becomes something that we may need to address. We want to be able to refer them to that social worker or that mental health facilitator. We also want the counselors and the social workers and the mental health facilitators to be able to come to us and say, hey, you know, the student told me this, it's an unsafe situation at home, or it's an unsafe situation in the neighborhood. You know, if the student doesn't feel comfortable coming to us, at least the administrators and the others can come to us and say, then we can go address that. You know, we can pull that student aside and say, hey, look, we're here to help. You know, we're not here to harm you. We want to keep you safe. So people may ask, you know, what's counseling and mentoring and education got to do with safety? Well, there again, too, if we've built that positive relationship and we've taught those students what an unsafe situation is, or, you know, what bullying is, then hopefully they will be willing to come to us to hopefully address an unsafe situation, an unsecure situation, before it rises to the level where we're being reactive instead of proactive. So it's holistically a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach is what we're after. So.
I mean, so we really have had a see something, say something philosophy, and I'm telling you, we're looking. We want to see it, know it, and do something about it. And I know that Johnny mentioned our 52 guests that are here tonight, but we also have those who will view online, so we want to welcome you, and we're counting you too, because we want everyone to feel like they belong and are connected to a caring adult. But in our see something, say something, there's a couple things I think are worth drawing out. We take absolutely everything so seriously that sometimes it may feel like you're getting too much communication. And we would prefer to err on that side. As a matter of fact, we have our emergency response badges that every employee has, and it's activated by the click of a button, which actually can cause false alarms sometimes, because if you've ever met a teacher, they carry about 1,000 things around with them every day, everywhere they go. I think they move into school and out of school and into their classroom every day. And when you're carrying everything on your badge, guess what happens? You bump your buttons. Right, and so if you are getting communication as a family member about something that's quickly resolved, you can rest assured it isn't because every single one of us wasn't involved immediately attended to the circumstance, and then came to a conclusion of a safe resolution. You can count on see something, say something, invites you to see something and say something, invites children to see something and say something, but we are already looking. And if we see something, we're going to do something. And so thank you for drawing that out. You know, as a matter of fact, the partnership that Mr. Stafford and Lieutenant Agan you have on a daily basis is profound. I think it's a model in our country. But it all does result in how children behave in their school environment because of their feeling of connection to their learning. And so, Mr. Creary, we're getting to the end of our panel time together, but you know, it's kind of been weird. We didn't have a typical school year last year. We, in the end, had about 55% of our kids learning on campus. We're now up to 98%. What happens when you bring everybody back together again? And give us a sense of how you feel the environment it looks like in our schools today.
Right. Now, I work with conduct prevention, intervention, and family support as one of the areas, as well as safety. I want to give a nod to the crisis alert system that Johnny talked about first. We had a situation right when this was installed where we had an incident that ended up not being a serious incident, but it appeared to be initially. And a teacher went ahead and clicked their security badge, and the school was in lockdown in 10 seconds. Every child was locked behind a closed door within 10 seconds. If this had been something they'd had at a place like Stoneman Douglas, lives would have been saved. So there is a false alarm every once in a while when somebody reacts to something that isn't as serious, but having that there and making sure our kids are safe first is a huge safety factor for our kids in our schools, and it allows us to have something that saves lives if that ever happens, and hopefully we will never see the real use of that. Jessica said schools are the safest place kids can be, and she was talking about COVID, but that's general for physical situations with kids. Schools are the safest place kids can be. When I was an assistant principal, there would be days where I was dealing with conduct, and I would be dealing with conduct situation after negative situation, and sometimes you can feel like that's all that's happening. And when that would happen, I would get out in the hallway and make sure that I said good in my mind every time I saw a good kid. And guess what? Your mind goes good, 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 good. You walk the halls, good, 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 good. And you realize that the negative stuff is 0.1% of the stuff. And even the kids that make a mistake are good kids. So there is so much more good out there than negative. Ms. Edwards opened by stating our Board of Education has a core belief and commitment that every learning environment will be supportive, safe, and secure, and that this includes high standards for our code of conduct at schools. Schools are dynamic places. The majority of behaviors are good, but it is and always has been a need for a code of conduct that ensures academically focused, safe schools. So over time, we have learned to modify our code of conduct to both hold students accountable and keep them connected to learning as much as possible. This includes ISS and OSS progressions that minimize lost class time, and I'll talk about a program that we have in a moment that talks about that. In response to community voice in situations just like this, we added language around vaping, disruption of virtual classrooms, and flexible consequences to avoid zero tolerance. In response, we have structures to ensure that OSS and hearing assignments are reviewed with coordinators for possible solutions to the assignments. So we have a structure in place to do that. Now the conduct data, we're all back in the same place at the same time. And one of the negative things that's come out of that, and I'm going to talk about some positive conduct data in a minute, but one of the things that's come out of that is we did see an initial increase in fights. In 2021, in August and September, we saw more fights than we did in August and September of 2019. Now we have more students than we had then, so you think that there will be more, but it was disturbing to me. And you look at that when you get students back together who haven't been in school together, and they're coming back together for that first time, and we have to reestablish the norms and the rules, then that is a concern. Now, one good thing I will say about that is in October, November, just like the Braves, we had a much better October and November than we did August and September. So I feel like we're turning that corner and we're seeing better. But when we look at that data from 2021 and 2019, the 2 years we can compare, because 2020 we cannot compare that data. It's not the same. The kids weren't in school like they are now. We have had lower numbers for hearings, excessive physical contact, weapons, and sexual misconduct. All those numbers are down in 2021 compared to 2019. That is great. Now, Antonio, Kristen, and Major Catlin all mentioned cell phones. And with the cell phones, one of the things we see when we do our qualitative investigations of fights, the majority of our fights develop outside of school through social media. So when you talk about parents being aware of what your kids are doing on social media, that's where a lot of the disagreements are happening. That's where people can be a little bit more anonymous and bold, and then when they see each other in school, sometimes they've written checks they can't cash, and hopefully they don't cash them. But that's something to be aware of, is making sure that we are aware of what our kids are doing on cell phones, because we see that as a root to a problem of fights that we see between kids in school. So I mentioned something about something we have for OSS that keeps kids connected. We hold kids accountable. We give them ISS and OSS when they violate our code of conduct. But we have an alternative to suspension pilot that we've started this year. And that pilot is started with 9th grade. When a child is assigned OSS, they are given the opportunity, and their parents are given the opportunity to go to the alternative to suspension program. This has a teacher that is there to support them in learning. This teacher is trained in repairing harm, in finding root causes, and getting the student to talk through ownership of what got them there in the first place. When they do this program, they have a survey at the end where students talk about their experience. The students are in the surveys talking about owning the problems, and we really truly believe that this is going to make less students come back to this program, less students getting ISS and OSS repeatedly when the students are owning what this is. This program was expanded to the 10th grade after fall break. It is a pilot. We look to expand it to 11th and 12th grade in the near future, and then also expand it to middle school. So by keeping our students more connected to school, otherwise these students, if they were out of school suspended, they would be unsupervised outside of school. This is a way to keep them connected, supervised, doing their work, and thinking about the ownership of their own problems in school. So with a combination of being proactive, responsive, and renewing, we are able to keep schools supportive, safe, and secure.
Love it. Thank you for that, Mr. Creary. You know, as you were talking, I was really just wanting to be back in school again. And I'm thinking that there's just, as long as there's been high schools and middle schools, there have been young people who challenge the boundaries. And this is really a conversation about restoring those boundaries, and together as a community being mindful of what is stretching our young people's experiences and exposures. But we're going to wrap up this panel, but we can't do that without actually acknowledging why this matters in the first place. And I would love it if Kristen and Antonio, would you wrap us up here before we move to our small group? Why does this matter to us? Why are we so passionate about this that we would be out on our Wednesday evening with our 52 friends and our video audience tonight?
So as humans, we have an instinctive need to belong, and children are no exception to the rule. They need to be able to come to school and lean into someone, lean on someone when they have a problem. Parents entrust us with their children, their precious cargo, for 7-8 hours a day, and they want to know that besides them, there's someone there that they can talk to love on them. So we have a moral and ethical obligation to our students. And you know, if a student doesn't feel loved, if they don't love their school, if they don't have that adult they can go and talk to, if they don't have friendship, that's basic Maslow's hierarchy. They cannot even begin to think about literacy and mathematics until they have those basic needs being met. And so my goal is when students leave the elementary level, that they love school, that they want to continue, you know, in middle school and high school. And we definitely don't want any student dropping out because they didn't have a person that they could connect with. And so our district talks a lot about connectivity. That's one of our big rocks for our district, and it begins at the elementary school level. I know I could point to each one of you if we had the time, and you could identify that teacher that you still remember, either good or bad. And you know, I think that, like Gabe said, there's a lot of good out there. If we choose to only see the bad, then that's all we're going to perseverate on. But definitely, it's my responsibility as an elementary school leader to build that foundation, and then I turn it over to this guy.
And ultimately, we want our students to be successful when they leave Henry County schools. And with that, with the soft skills and knowing how to cope with differences that they may experience in life, we all have experiences where even as adults, we've had differences with other adults. And we had some mechanism, someone has taught us ways of coping with that. And so it's our responsibility to instill that into our students to ensure that they're successful. When students are matriculating through McDonough High School, we focus on the 3 E's. And so we want to make sure that they have a post-secondary plan when they leave high school. Either they have entering a career, And no offense to McDonald's, Wendy's, and all of that, but we want to aim a little bit higher and get them into those careers so they are going into those careers, employment. The second E, enlisting, the military, or enrolling. You must have a post-secondary plan before you leave high school, and that's 100% of our students. And again, that's a very good opportunity for our counselors to connect with students. Another thing, this is important because not only is this protecting the student, this is also protecting your household and your well-being. Because a lot of these things that are taking place outside of the schoolhouse, it has a way of showing up in your neighborhood, in your home, and we want to make sure not only are our schools safe, we want to make sure that your homes are safe as well. So it matters. It's very important so that our students are successful and ultimately your homes are successful.
Well said, and honestly, you've gotten a little bit of a glimpse of our passion as well as our actions and how we are really grappling with the season and what we are doing as a school system and in partnership with our sheriff's office for student well-being and student safety. But really, we have some time set aside that we hear from you. What do you see as a gap, as a blind spot? You wish you knew more about, you wish you heard more about. And so I'm going to ask JD if you could come and wrap us up and transition us into our small group conversations that we have prepared. Tossing it to you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you all so very much for being here this evening. We most definitely wanted you to be here this evening so you could hear all this wonderful information. Let's give our panel and Superintendent Davis a big round of applause for all the information they shared. A tremendous amount of knowledge and experience sitting on this stage that is guiding our schools to safer schools, to more inclusive schools, to schools that are going to set Henry County apart from everyone. Now, while we wanted you to hear this information, we also wanted to hear from you. So we are going to break you guys off into small groups, and we have 3 big questions that we want you to discuss with a facilitator that we have designated.